In the summer of 1944, a Sherman crew had less than a minute to bail out of a burning tank before the ammunition cooked off and turned 30 tons of steel into a fireball. Less than a minute. That is why what these men packed inside mattered almost as much as the armor around them. But here is the twist. Some of the deadliest tools they carried never appeared on a single official loadout sheet. Number 14 on this list was so controversial that an enemy government once branded it a violation of the laws of war, yet American crews kept using it anyway. And number 3 was not built to kill the enemy at all. It was built to destroy their own tank. These weapons turned a cramped steel box into a rolling arsenal. Hit that subscribe button because this changes how you picture the war. Let's begin with number 25. Number 25, the M3 fighting knife. Long before a tanker reached for a rifle, he reached for the blade tucked inside his coveralls. The M3 trench knife, issued from 1943, had a slim 6.5-inch blade and a ribbed grip built for one grim job: close, silent work when there was no room to swing anything bigger. Inside a Sherman there rarely was. The turret basket left a man wedged between the gun breech and the radios, and if the hatch jammed after a hit, that knife became a pry bar, a strap cutter, a last resort. Crews used it to slice ration tins, carve their names into the hull, and open crates of shells. Veterans remembered it less as a weapon than as a companion, the one tool always within reach when everything else was bolted down or burning. Number 24, the entrenching tool. It looks like nothing, a folding shovel strapped to the outside of the hull, but ask any veteran and the entrenching tool was among the most used pieces of gear a crew owned. When a Sherman threw a track in a Normandy hedgerow, 5 men climbed out into the open and dug. When artillery walked toward them, they dug faster. And when a German infantryman came over the engine deck in the dark, more than one tanker swung that sharpened steel blade like a battle axe. Soldiers filed the edges deliberately for exactly that reason. The shovel dug the fighting positions, buried the dead, and pried tanks out of French mud that swallowed vehicles whole. Humble, yes, but in the chaos of a breakout, this was the tool that kept a crew alive between the shooting. Number 23, the machete. In the Pacific, where Shermans clawed through jungle on Saipan, Peleliu, and Okinawa, the machete rode inside almost every tank. Vines choked the trails, elephant grass towered over the turret, and a stalled tank could not see 10 feet in any direction. So a crewman would drop out the escape hatch and hack a path forward while the others covered him. The machete cleared fields of fire, opened coconuts when the water ran out, and cut brush to camouflage a hull at night. It was crude and it was cheap. A few dollars of stamped steel, but in that green hell, it did work no rifle or cannon ever could. Crews who fought their way across the islands swore the blade earned its place in the fighting compartment as surely as any gun. Number 22, the privately bought revolver. Here is something the Army never planned for. Plenty of tankers went to war carrying a pistol they bought themselves, often before they ever shipped out. Fathers handed down old Colt revolvers. Men pawned watches for a compact .38 they could tuck in a shoulder holster. The reason was simple and dark. Every tanker had heard the stories of crews trapped in a burning hull, and a small personal revolver was insurance. A man kept on his own body, not in a rack that might be blocked by flame. Officers looked the other way. These weapons rarely fired a shot in anger, but their presence said everything about the fear that rode inside a Sherman. When the odds turned bad, a man wanted a weapon that belonged to him alone. Number 21. The bayonet. Every crew kept at least one M1 bayonet aboard, and not only for the rare moment a rifle needed one. Inside a tank, a bayonet was a universal blade. Crews used it to lever open ammunition tins, scrape carbon off the breech, cut wire, and stake down tarps. But its real value showed when a Sherman was knocked out and the surviving crew found themselves on foot in enemy territory, suddenly infantry. A rifle with a bayonet was the difference between a passenger and a soldier. The 16 inches of steel weighed almost nothing and cost the Army pennies, so it went everywhere. Tankers who never fixed it to a barrel still kept it close, because in the fog of a knocked-out tank, any edge was worth its weight. Number 20. The captured Luger. The German Luger P-08 was the single most coveted trophy of the war, and Sherman crews were no exception. But it was more than a souvenir. A crew rolling into a captured town would strip pistols off surrendered soldiers, and that Luger, or its cheaper cousin, the Walther P-38, became a genuine backup weapon. American .45 caliber ammunition was heavy and bulky. A slim 9mm pistol slid into a pocket easily, and captured German ammunition littered every battlefield in Europe. Crews swapped them, gambled for them, and mailed them home. Wearing an enemy sidearm carried a quiet risk, though. A tanker captured with German weapons could expect harsh treatment. Still, the temptation was too strong. That elegant pistol tucked in a tanker's belt was part trophy, part gun, and pure war. Number 19. The captured MP-40. If the Luger was the trophy, the MP-40 submachine gun was the workhorse. American tankers grabbed these German weapons by the crateful because they were compact, folding down small enough to stow in a Sherman without eating precious space. Firing the same 9mm round as the captured pistols, an MP-40 gave a bailed-out crew serious firepower in a tight fight. Veterans reported that some crews preferred it to their own submachine guns for its balance and its folding stock. Ammunition was never a problem in Europe, where the retreating German army left it strewn across every field. The catch was the sound. Fire a burst from a captured weapon near friendly lines, and your own infantry might turn their guns on the noise. Crews used them anyway, carefully and quietly. Number 18. The flare pistol. Bolted near the turret hatch of nearly every Sherman was the M8 pyrotechnic pistol, a stubby brass gun that fired signal flares. It was not built to kill, yet it was one of the most important weapons in the tank. A green flare called for infantry support. A red flare warned of enemy armor. White lit up a battlefield at night so gunners could see the shapes creeping toward them. Coordinating tanks and foot soldiers came down to these silent bursts of colored fire arcing over the smoke. And in a pinch, a flare fired straight into an enemy trench or a haystack full of hidden soldiers became a terrifying improvised weapon, all fire and blinding light. Crews guarded their flare cartridges jealously because a single colored star could summon help when the radio failed. Number 17. The M1 Garand. The Sherman was not designed to carry a full battle rifle for every man, but crews found room anyway, usually one or two M1 Garands lashed inside the fighting compartment. The reason came down to a single ugly truth. Tanks die, and when they do, the crew becomes infantry in the worst possible moment. A Garand gave a dismounted tanker real reach, 8 rounds of hard hitting, .30-06 ammunition that could hold off attackers while the crew fell back. It also let a tank commander pick off distant threats from the open hatch without wasting a machine gun burst. The rifle was long and awkward inside a hull already stuffed with shells, so crews argued over whether to keep it. But the men who survived a knockout usually wished they had carried more. Number 16, the M1 carbine. Where the Garand was powerful but bulky, the M1 carbine was the answer for cramped spaces. Light, short, and firing a smaller round, the carbine was officially the tanker's shoulder weapon of choice, and thousands rode inside Shermans across every front. A man could snatch it from its rack and be out the hatch in seconds. For guarding the tank at night, for close work in a village, for a driver who needed something more than a pistol, the carbine fit the job. Its lighter recoil meant even an exhausted crewman could hit what he aimed at. Critics grumbled that the round lacked stopping power at distance, but inside the close, brutal fights that swallowed tank crews, reach mattered less than speed. The carbine gave them speed. Number 15, the smoke grenade. The M18 colored smoke grenade might be the most underrated weapon a Sherman carried. Crews kept them stacked by the dozen, and they saved lives in ways a cannon never could. A billowing cloud of white or yellow smoke hid a crippled tank long enough for the crew to escape. It screened a whole platoon crossing open ground. Colored smoke marked targets for artillery and warned aircraft overhead which vehicles were friendly. When a Sherman took a hit and started to burn, a smoke grenade tossed onto the ground could blind the enemy gunner just long enough for 5 terrified men to scramble clear. It threw no shrapnel and killed no one directly, yet veterans counted it among the most valuable things aboard. Sometimes the best weapon is the one that lets you disappear. Number 14, the trench shotgun. Now here is where it gets controversial. The Winchester model, 1897 pump shotgun, loaded with buckshot, was so devastating in close combat that an enemy government had once formally branded it a violation of the laws of war and threatened to execute anyone caught with one. American troops kept using it anyway. Sherman crews, especially in the Pacific, treasured the shotgun for the one nightmare they feared most, an enemy soldier reaching the tank and swarming over the deck. At point-blank range, a shotgun cleared a hull of attackers when there was no time to aim. It guarded prisoners, cleared bunkers, and swept jungle trails. Compact and brutally effective, it lived on a rack inside the turret. The protests never stopped American tankers, because in a knife-fight distance brawl, nothing else on this list could match it. Number 13, the white phosphorus grenade. Few weapons frightened the enemy like the white phosphorus grenade, and Sherman crews kept a supply within arm's reach. When it burst, it threw a cloud of dense white smoke and burning particles that no soldier wanted to be near. Crews used it 2 ways. As a screen, it hit a stalled tank behind an instant wall of smoke thicker than any colored grenade could make. And against a dug-in anti-tank gun or an enemy machine nest, it forced the crews to abandon their positions and run. Tankers respected it and feared it in equal measure, because the same weapon that saved them could turn on them if a burst landed too close to their own hull. It was a tool of last resort, kept for the moments when nothing gentler would do. Number 12, the fragmentation grenade. The Mark II fragmentation grenade, the famous pineapple, went aboard every Sherman by the crateful. It was the tanker's answer to a threat the tank itself could not reach, an enemy soldier hugging the hull in a blind spot where no machine gun could depress far enough to hit him. A commander would simply crack the hatch, drop a grenade over the side, button up, and let it do the work. Crews cleared trenches with them, flushed out cellars, and tossed them ahead when advancing on foot after a knockout. Small, cheap, and endlessly useful, the grenade filled the deadly gaps in a tank's armor of firepower. In the hedgerow fighting of Normandy, where infantry crept within feet of the tanks, this humble sphere of cast iron was worth its weight in gold. Number 11. The Thompson submachine gun. The Thompson was a legend, and inside a Sherman it earned that legend. Firing the heavy .45 caliber round, the Tommy gun laid down a wall of lead in close quarters that shredded any threat within a few dozen yards. Crews mounted it in a bracket inside the turret, ready to grab the instant the tank was overrun or the men had to fight their way out. Its stopping power was fearsome, its reputation more so, and enemy soldiers who heard that distinctive hammering knew what was coming. The downside was weight. A loaded Thompson with spare magazines was heavy, and .45 caliber ammunition ate up storage in a tank already crammed with shells. But for a crew defending a burning hull at spitting distance, the Thompson was the weapon they wanted in their hands. Number 10. The grease gun. By 1943, the Army wanted something cheaper and simpler than the Thompson, and the M3 submachine gun, nicknamed the grease gun for its resemblance to a mechanic's tool, became the tanker's standard. It was ugly, stamped from sheet metal, and it looked like it might fall apart in your hands. But it fired the same heavy .45 round. Its slow rate of fire made it easy to control, and its folding wire stock let it collapse into a space no Thompson could fit. That mattered enormously inside a Sherman, where every cubic inch was accounted for. Crews clipped it beside the hatch for the instant they needed to bail and fight. Veterans mocked its looks and praised its reliability. It cost a fraction of the Thompson, and it did the same brutal job in less space. Number 9. The Browning automatic rifle. Not every Sherman carried one, but plenty of crews scrounged a Browning automatic rifle and stowed it inside, and the ones who did rarely regretted it. The BR was a heavy, hard-hitting automatic weapon that bridged the gap between a rifle and a machine gun. For a dismounted crew, it turned 5 stranded men into a fighting squad with real suppressive power, enough to pin an enemy down while the wounded were dragged clear. Tankers also propped it in the open hatch to rake tree lines and second-story windows where snipers lurked. It weighed a back-breaking 16 pounds, loaded, and it hogged space, so it was never official crew gear. But scavenging one was a mark of a crew that had learned the hard way that a tank is only safe until it isn't. Number 8. The Panzerfaust. Some of the best anti-tank weapons a Sherman crew carried were built by the enemy. The German Panzerfaust, a simple single-shot recoilless launcher, littered European battlefields by the thousands, and American tankers picked them up and kept them aboard. The reason was sobering. The Sherman's own gun sometimes struggled against the thickest German armor, but a captured Panzerfaust could punch through a wall, a bunker, or a fortified house that a tank commander did not want to waste main gun rounds on. Crews learned to fire the discarded German launchers and stashed a few inside for emergencies. It was a strange sight, an American crew defending their tank with the very weapon designed to destroy it. But in a war of scarcity and improvisation, a free anti-tank punch was too good to leave lying in the mud. Number 7. The M1911 pistol. The Colt M1911A1 was the one weapon almost every single crewman carried on his own body, and for good reason. In the packed interior of a Sherman, there was no room to swing a rifle, but a heavy .45 caliber pistol rode in a shoulder holster where a man could reach it even wedged behind the gun. It was the weapon of last resort, the one a tanker clutched as he scrambled out of a burning hull with the enemy closing in. The .45 caliber round was famous for stopping a man cold, and crews trusted it with their lives. Reliable, simple, and utterly dependable, the 1911 had already served for 3 decades. For the men inside the steel box, it was less a weapon than a promise that they would not go down without a fight. Number 6. The WWII machine gun. Here is a weapon most people forget the Sherman even had. Set into the front hull, operated by the assistant driver, sat a .30 caliber Browning machine gun with almost no aiming device at all. The bow gunner fired it by pointing the whole tank and watching his tracers walk toward the target. It sounds primitive, and it was, but that gun did fearsome work. As a Sherman rolled toward a hedgerow or a village, the bow gun sprayed suppressing fire into every window, ditch, and tree line, keeping enemy infantry pinned and their heads down. It could not stop a tank, but it kept the men with anti-tank weapons from ever getting close. The assistant driver had one of the loneliest, most vital jobs aboard, sweeping the ground ahead with a hidden gun few of the enemy ever saw coming. Number 5. The coaxial machine gun. Right beside the main cannon, aimed by the same controls, sat the coaxial .30 caliber Browning, and it did more killing than the big gun ever did. The cannon was for other tanks and hardened targets, but most of what threatened a Sherman was soft, infantry, gun crews, anti-tank teams creeping through the brush. The coaxial gun answered them. Because it moved with the turret, the gunner could hose down anything the main sight covered without wasting a precious shell. It fired thousands of rounds a day in heavy fighting, its barrel glowing, its ammunition belt snaking through the cramped turret. Loaders spent as much time feeding the coaxial as the cannon. Quiet in the shadow of the 75, this humble machine gun was the tank's true, everyday weapon, and the one enemy foot soldiers feared most. Number 4. The main gun ammunition itself. Consider a moment the sheer arsenal a Sherman carried in its own belly. Bolted into racks around the hull and floor sat dozens of shells for the main gun, high-explosive rounds to level buildings, armor-piercing rounds to fight other tanks, each one heavier than a bowling ball. This was the tank's reason for existing, and it was also its greatest danger. A single penetrating hit into that ammunition storage was what turned a Sherman into the fireball that gave the men less than a minute to escape. Later, models packed the shells in water-jacketed bins to slow the flames, a change that saved countless lives. But the truth remained. The most powerful weapon inside a Sherman was also the thing most likely to kill its own crew. They lived, quite literally, sitting on a stack of explosives. Number 3. The thermite grenade. And now the weapon that was never meant to touch the enemy at all. The thermite grenade burned at a temperature hot enough to melt straight through solid steel, and every Sherman crew was trained to keep one ready for a single terrible purpose, destroying their own tank. When a Sherman was disabled and could not be recovered, doctrine was clear. The crew would drop a thermite grenade into the breech of the main gun, and the molten fury would weld the mechanism into a useless lump, denying the enemy a working weapon and a wealth of intelligence. Retreating crews, used them to wreck engines, radios, and guns, so nothing of value fell into enemy hands. It was a weapon of grim finality, the tool a crew reached for when their tank was already lost, and all that remained was to make sure the enemy gained nothing. Number 2, the canister round. Now for a weapon straight out of an earlier century, the canister round, a shell that turned the Sherman's cannon into the largest shotgun on the battlefield. Instead of a single explosive projectile, the canister was packed with hundreds of steel balls. When it fired, the shell casing tore open at the muzzle and unleashed that swarm of shot in a spreading cone of death. Its one purpose was infantry at close range. A human wave, a trench full of soldiers, an ambush sprung from a tree line just yards away. At that distance, a single canister round could scythe down an entire attacking squad in one thunderclap. Crews facing determined enemy assaults, especially in the Pacific, loaded it when they saw men rushing the hull. It was the tank's ultimate answer to being swarmed, an antique idea made monstrous by a modern gun. Number 1, the .50 caliber Browning, and crowning the entire arsenal, mounted on the turret roof where the commander could reach it, sat the M2 Browning heavy machine gun, the fearsome .50 caliber. There was simply nothing else like it. Firing a round longer than a man's hand, the .50 could tear through the walls of a house, rip apart a truck, chew through light armor, and reach targets far beyond anything else the crew carried. Tank commanders used it against aircraft, against infantry, against enemy vehicles, and against fortified positions that shrugged off smaller rounds. Its deep, hammering report was one of the most recognizable sounds of the war, and enemy soldiers scattered when they heard it. Exposed atop the tank, the commander who manned it took a terrible risk, standing half out of the hatch in the open. But the .50 caliber was the weapon that could reach out and touch anything the enemy sent, and it earns its place at the very top of this list. From the humble trench knife to the thundering .50 caliber, these 25 weapons tell the real story of the American tanker. He was not just a man behind a cannon, he was an infantryman, a demolition expert, and a scavenger, all folded into one greasy set of coveralls inside a box of steel. Every knife, grenade, and machine gun crammed into that Sherman answered the same brutal question. What do you do when the armor around you is not enough? Which of these surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments and tell me which weapon you would have wanted at your side. Because when the hatch dropped and the shooting started, these were the tools that brought young men home.